Welcome to the Social Your Sales podcast. Social has changed the B2B and professional services sales landscape forever. We are here to help you navigate what you need to know and how to execute these new strategies. Whether you are a sales leader, individual producer, or a member of the C-suite looking for answers, this is the podcast for you. Now here are your hosts, Brandon and Erik.
Welcome to Social Your Sales with Erik Holdo, and seated next to me, Brandon Lee. Yes, he is. We're perched high atop Sandy Springs in Georgia here, looking at a burgeoning thunderstorm that's coming our way. And you know what the burgeoning thunderstorm coming your way is? Social selling.
That was good.
You like that?
That was a good transition.
I'm a marketing dude.
Wow.
So
it's like you planned the outside weather just for our podcast.
Exactly. And today on the show, we actually have a good friend of mine, but just a really significant key leader, executive at Konica Minolta that I was with for 17 years. And she has a great story. She was the VP of marketing and sales in the U.S. She went to Europe, did some global work at Europe, is now back as a SVP. But her knowledge and her practical thinking is so far beyond just the roles that she's had. She's really, I mean, man. She said nothing I didn't agree with. What did you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, and the thing too is I was also impressed with what she said and how she said it, considering her level and her role in a $12 billion company. When somebody like that, and this is, Gartner and Forrester, McKinsey, and we got CMOs being quoted, and it almost gets where when you hear this, if you're not doing this, you're in trouble. They're like, yeah, I know. And I think that's part of what happened to companies in the cloud era, right? When companies were moving to the cloud, it was like everyone said, cloud, you got to be there. And a lot of people went, It's like the hype. It's like the weather report, right? They tell you a big storm's coming and it misses, and everybody starts to go, is it really true?
If I can just add to that, you know what it is to me is TikTok. The social sales thing this is my TikTok, okay?
Yeah.
I find I have no use for TikTok other than it's funny once in a while to watch a dog jumping around to some music. And yet you tell me that this is a legitimate B2B or at least professional services type of sales platform. Blah. So I think I'm like a lot of CMOs today regarding social selling. I think my views towards TikTok, clearly not towards social selling, but towards TikTok are the same that they have, where they're sitting here going, bah, humbug. And mainly it's from ignorance. I'm just going to tell you, I'm ignorant of TikTok because I don't use it. I don't find the value in it that others use. Yeah. Clearly there's something there, and I think that this is similar, don't you think?
Yeah, and I think that's what Velinda brings to the table. In very precise and clear messages of we need to change the mindset of starting at the top, but also our salespeople, right? We need to change mindset. She gave the example and said, we got people that have been in their sales role for 20 years and been very successful at it, and they go, I don't need to change. And maybe 5-10 years ago they said, I don't need to change, and they were kind of right. But we're losing runway on that message. And COVID accelerated a lot of that. And then the prevalence of so many people that just want to work from home now is going to be less travel, less face-to-face. And if you're not equipped to be able to do this digital social as a medium well, you are going to lose, because there's companies out there. I mean, obviously, a lot of our customers are people that go, we need to learn this as a organization. Help us become a social organization.
Absolutely. So listen up. Great interview with Velinda Cox. I really appreciated her coming on board. I think you'll learn something from this. And this is different for us. It's really coming from a customer's view, and even a customer's view in some cases.
And I would say, listen for what Velinda said with how she would expect people to use social to capture her attention. Yep. That's something you should look for.
All right. We'll talk to you in just a bit. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Social Your Sales, the podcast all about social selling and marketing and all those great topics. And I invited on today a dear friend of mine who I've known for now probably going on 17 years or so, I think, across different companies and whatnot. And excited she's actually coming. She's back in the U.S. She was on assignment for the company that I used to work for, Konica Minolta, out in Europe for quite a while, and then managed to get back here to the U.S. So very excited to have Velinda Cox, who is currently you're the EVP of, hold on, I got it right here, SVP of eCommerce. I knew there was an E in there somewhere. SVP of eCommerce for Konica Minolta Business Solutions here in the U.S. and has just a great history, great record, has been in marketing and touches sales in all different aspects. So thought it would be a great time to have Velinda on board. So Velinda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Erik. I'm thrilled to be here and looking forward to the dialogue.
Excellent.
Yeah, so Velinda, I know that your title currently is SVP of e-commerce. And as we're talking about social selling and we talk a lot about personal branding, but we had a good conversation about a month or so ago about organization using social as a channel or as a medium. What are your thoughts around that you're with, a publicly traded, very large, $12 billion company. What are your thoughts around social as that channel for individuals to build relationships and close deals?
Sounds like a leading question to me.
No, and I don't want it to be. It's more like this is what we talk about, right? So
to answer your question, I think that salespeople today that aren't taking advantage of the social environment are really going to be left behind. And unfortunately, that sounds like a really strong message, but the reality is that you can't knock on doors anymore. You can't actually get people to pick up the phone anymore. And there's a lot of security issues related around the physical environment based on post-COVID world, right? So any way that someone can, in an engaging way, communicate and connect, offering value, and in social environments, you do that. Almost all of my vendor partner relationships that are being developed in my current role are coming to me through relationships and connection communications in the social environment, whether that's where I'm watching a webcast and I'm connecting with the people that are putting that on, or I'm reading a white paper and following up with someone that I see as an expert, or whether that's someone who's literally reaching out and connecting with me in LinkedIn, and then and they're offering an interesting or compelling value proposition in a way where I follow back up with them. So I think it's definitely a key to success, if not the key to success for engagement today.
So I appreciate your role, and to hear that, what are the challenges that companies like Konica Minolta, the size, are facing with? I think you had, and forgive me if I overstep on this, you had a pretty strong opinion about they need to use social or they're going to be left behind. What's the challenge with getting the teams to actually use social and use it well?
Yeah, I think part of it's mindset. So leadership has to have a growth mindset that what we've always done is not what we need to do going forward. So that's a starting point. I think secondly, you have a lot of very successful people who've done their whole careers. They've attended President's Circle award trips. They've been recognized for their top performance doing things. And so it's hard for them to think, well, I have to change. I've gotten to this point doing something a certain way. Yeah. So for me, the mindset itself is important. I think that the second piece is them understanding, so them receiving some education, understanding how to use the tools. What are some use cases that might be relevant to what they're doing, to see examples of success. So it's helping them have that mind shift. And I think that's the responsibility of the leadership in these organizations to do. So while I was in Europe, I received an award for an innovation basically direction that I offered, where we re-educated the organization on how to engage differently, more strategically, taking into consideration social as one compelling element of that, but helping them understand and see that, the dimensions of how we engage with customers for their value and their benefit outcome directed is way more important than the features and advantages and benefits of product we used to sell, right? So really focusing on how you bring customers the business results that they want, right? It's about them achieving their success versus us selling them something.
Can I extrapolate that to say you focus more on the buyer journey than just your sales processes and sales journey is part of that?
Well, and I think you guys have said some things around this that, where 67 to 70% of the sales cycle is done by the time a sales rep gets up an appointment. And generally that due diligence, that research, that vendor vetting process that we're not a part of, if I'm a salesperson that's just knocking on the door and I'm lucky enough to get an appointment at that point, that whole dynamic has changed so significantly that you can't focus on what we had as a sales process, like what's in your pipeline, how much revenue do you have? You have to start to think about how do we engage and initiate those conversations around the business outcomes they're looking to achieve. And then how do we start that journey, not at the 67% of completion, but at day one around, what's in their technology roadmap? What are their focus on business priorities? And then extrapolate how can we help bring value to that conversation and bring them along to the outcome they're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Do you have a vision of what that looks like? I mean, you said some things. I think most people go, yeah, we want to do that, and then go, but we don't know how. So he said, not be at the 67%, but start at more of the initiation side, get in early and add value. What does that look like in a company like Konica Minolta and how large you are?
Well, I don't know that the size is that important as much as, what are you doing? And there are things like understanding the customer's customer. It's a simple concept, but really, thinking through, how are you bringing value to that company, and then they're bringing value to their customers as a result of your solutions and services, or which, that's that third box thinking that I think everyone's familiar with, and it's about formulating those value propositions in a way where you're already thinking about what are their key priorities. It's researching the customer and understanding them better before you start. It's looking at what their leadership is talking about publicly, and then coming back and having those connection points on how you can help them achieve their business outcomes that are what they're saying they need, and you can help them get there in a different way that they haven't thought about. Bringing value to me is always, it's either introducing a new way to do something that they didn't think that they knew how to do before, or taking something that they were on a journey direction and showing them a different way. So it's the surprises. I laugh a lot. When I first moved to New Jersey, the first time I pulled up to get gas and the person pumped gas for me, that was a value I didn't expect. It's creating those surprises where customers go, wow, I didn't know you did that, or I didn't know you could help me with that, or wow, you're going to help me get to that outcome. I didn't even know that you provided that. So, but starting with the customer's needs, not like trying to sell our stuff, if you will.
It's interesting because Konica Minolta, when I was there for 17 years, and it was always fun to be able to share with people some of the things that we did that they had no idea we did. But when I think about how would I express that to them today with today's constraints that we have, it's difficult. It would be very difficult for me to have that extended discussion with them, especially if I were to listen to all the quote-unquote LinkedIn experts in the marketplace who are basically looking at pushing automation and connect with as many people as you can, and that's where their focus is. And the thing I keep going back to, and I think I've already mentioned it in 2 podcasts, and this will be the 3rd, is research. You mentioned it just a moment ago. Researching that target, that client, their company, and what their company's customers may need is so critically important. And it's so overlooked when you take this mass push out of, hey, here's me, here's what I do, buy from me. That no one cares. No one cares what you do because you haven't built that relationship first. And social, the one thing that's exciting from my perspective is this is the one area where I can build that trusted business advisor status with the marketplace at large, with the connections that I have, in the hopes of, as I bring content to them, starting to pick up engagement and potentially directly target engagement based on that position, right? So now you mentioned, I think it's very interesting that in your role as SVP of eCommerce, you're now dealing with suppliers who are contacting you to, I'm sure, to probably I don't know, sell their products through your site or what have you, but in their outreach to you, so you as a customer, the receiver of inbound social, what works best when somebody is coming towards you and wanting to engage with you? What do you want to see from them?
Well, first, that they understand what I'm actually doing, right? So I think that, this is an old story, but I remember, and this is going back probably 12 years ago when I was in the U.S. headquarters before, and I was a VP of Strategic Business Planning at that point. And I remember we still had phones on our desk at that point. And I remember checking my voicemail, and there was someone that said, I saw your tweet yesterday, and you said this. And we can help enable that outcome. It's something you probably haven't considered. I'd like to talk to you over 10 minutes about it. Well, I called that person back. And most of the time it's delete when I was getting phone messages on a phone. And they basically offered a value proposition to me because they had listened to my tweet, which had at that time to do with enabling salespeople's success, very similar topic, and measurements and metrics. We, within 30 days, made an acquisition of their solution outside of budget because it was so relevant to the outcome I was trying to achieve as a business owner. So I'm giving you that example, Erik, because I think it's important first to know what your decision makers are trying to achieve, to watch them. Social isn't just about connecting. It's also about paying attention to what those leaders in those roles are talking about, what they are, in some cases, commenting on someone else's, because if they're following other messaging, it must be important to them. And if they are posting themselves content out there, it's also mostly important to them in some way. So if that connects with the topic of what you're selling, you should be all over it and commenting, liking, asking questions, and starting to engage, because that's where they are, right? That's where they're playing.
What I like about that too, for everybody to hear, is Velinda didn't say, send me a compelling direct message with a connection request.
Right, exactly.
Right? It's engage, join the conversation and bring value to it, not just connect.
The last, I'd say 5 people I spoke to that were from LinkedIn that I really had no relationship with in the past, all came from some engagement at some point, whether it was commenting on my comment or me commenting on their comments or on their post or whatever it might be. But there's so much interchange there that occurs where, in some cases, it's of a personal nature. My background with cooking, Velinda, and sometimes there's a good number of people on my LinkedIn that are in the chefy world, in the restaurant world. And so we go back and forth with some of them. Now, they're not going to be one of my FunnelAmplified customers, but we have some great discussions about things that are germane to them. And you know what? There are times when there may be somebody out there that I can refer over to one of these people. It's not all just about what can I get from this person, but I'm creating a network. That relationship network has to extend beyond just my needs and even my direct clients' needs, but what do my connections need? And I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever got, I think it was you that gave it to me. I will never say that again.
We fought last episode, and now you praise me. I love it.
Was to, when you make a connection request, say, hey, how can I help you get your content out? How can I help you get your messaging out? Is there anything that I can assist with my network to help you in your network? I thought that was kind of a very impactful way of starting that engagement process as well. Social Your Sales will be right back.
Is your sales team struggling to hit quota? Are your buyers ignoring your sales requests for conversations? The third tier of digital transformation is social. Is your team equipped to meet this challenge? This show is brought to you by FunnelAmplified. We help sales teams align their sales process with how modern buyers prefer to make their purchase decisions. FunnelAmplified is a social selling platform that drives new opportunities with your sales team, using proven social selling tactics to drive pipelines and hit quotas. With FunnelAmplified, it's quota achieved. To learn more about FunnelAmplified or start a free trial, please visit us at FunnelAmplified.com.
Now, how transparent is, so in the world you're dealing in, the world I know pretty well, at least the overall aspects of it, and without talking about CAM specifically, but in the industry as a whole, in this graphic communications industry, and for those that are listening at home that don't know what that is, we're talking about the print industry, IT services industry as well, ECM business. Those are some of the main, I would say, main points of CAM and many of your competitors. Are you seeing any of the channels out there, without being specific of which one, are you seeing any of the channels embracing these types of new methods of social selling? Or is it sort of a wait and see moment and everyone knows that maybe they should be doing something, but they're not quite sure what yet? And you see little bursts of it here and there maybe, but not really a strategy.
Yeah, I think it's all over the board. I think you have some organizations that are strategically mature and they've taken into consideration, that they want to leverage investment and education into sort of not just the social aspects, but the education aspects of why, the value, and how to do that. And then you have some organizations that are sitting there where they've been successful all along and they're kind of holding the tide a bit to go forward. They're a little intimidated by taking that step and jumping off in an area they don't have expertise. But you can hire experts, you can hire consultants, and sometimes it just takes a little bit of additional knowledge to get you comfortable with making that step. I would say if you're not making that step, you're in danger of being left behind. Right now, Michael Wade wrote a great book about the digital vortex with all this digital transformation taking place. And you're either close to the center of that vortex or you're on the outside. And very quickly, any industry could flip into the center of that vortex. And it's very important that everyone's paying attention, that digital disruption could happen at any time. And that is also driven by, to me, social engagement is sort of the digital disruption in the sales area, right? It's not so much that you've got the back office technology that you're running a digital infrastructure on. It's how you're engaging in a digital way is also digitally disrupting.
It's interesting you mentioned that because one of our colleagues in this industry, he has coined the social selling as a pillar of the digital transformation as a whole. And I mean, at Konica Minolta, there's a senior VP of digital transformation, I believe. I mean, this is a major point of CAM's messaging and others in that part of the industry is assisting clients in that digital transformation process. How do you see social selling and the mindset behind it and the changes that are required? Hopefully not a lot of infrastructure changes. I think people have had enough of infrastructure changes as far as systems and tools and whatnot, but the change of mindset, is that something that you think is part of that digital transformation? Absolutely.
Having a growth mindset, which I think is a challenge for a lot of us. I mean, we all like what we know. It's where we're comfortable. But having our own ability to sort of challenge where we need to get ourselves uncomfortable, to me, is what has to happen with all leadership today. And if you're in sales and you're comfortable with what you've done, you're probably not doing the right things, because you have to be in an uncomfortable position now, and because then you're growing and you're challenging yourself to do something that you've never done before. And if that's happening, you're probably going in the right direction. So, when we were in school and we had to study for a test and we were uncomfortable because we didn't know we were going to pass the exam, that's because we were learning something and we were getting towards a new point in understanding. We have to do that every day now. The world's moving so rapidly. Technology is changing so rapidly, and that is also changing the business environment. If people are doing what they've always done, I can guarantee you that that's not going to make them successful tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Velinda, I've heard you say a couple of times, like, if you're not adapting, you're in trouble. What does that mean? Is this 12 months out? Is it 36 months out? Is it 6 months out? I mean, everything's moving so quickly. And we were just, before we got on, we were talking about another Gartner PDF white paper we were looking at, and the numbers are kind of scary, and that what CMOs are reporting is that budgets are going down, less percentage of revenue, and revenues are gone down, especially with COVID. And so what they thought was to have larger budgets, they've got smaller budgets, but they're all also, where 70 some percent of them were saying they know they got to invest more in MarTech. I think there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of fear, but for anyone listening, like, what does that mean? We got to move, we got to make these decisions quick, but what does that really mean?
Well, I think there's also studies, McKinsey, Forrester, they all have some larger studies that have been done about post-COVID results, comparing companies that did certain things with both their marketing approaches and their strategic sales approaches prior to COVID, during COVID, and after. And then there's some companies that haven't done anything. And the key output of that is revenue and profit is really, you can see the difference. Those that made early investments in transformation change and the way they were engaging with sales and the way the tools were to help their organizations understand how to use social as an example are showing significant improvements in that stability. They've all been hit by, everyone got some type of hit from our COVID experience that's continuing. But those who laid the ground early for change, who had early adoption and also strategies for those components to force change, to enable change, to educate change, have definitely maintained higher revenues and better profit positions.
Yeah, that McKinsey brief, I think it was like August 4th. It wasn't too long ago. That was very eye-opening. And when it comes from McKinsey, I think we all ought to take a step back and really take it serious. What are some initial steps? And I've heard you say mindset several times, but what are some of the either how do we work with change within mindsets around social, or what are some of the early steps that organizations should be taking, do you think?
I think there's kind of one, two, or three things. One, it has to do with education, which I mentioned. The other is using use case examples that resonate with those individual stakeholders. So if you're talking about sales, show them salespeople who got stronger results and maintain that through, some of the hardships that have hit us lately. If you're talking with leadership stakeholders, show them the revenue and the profit difference that's happened, and give examples of companies that they can relate to that have had those results. So I think it's about helping them learn how to do, but the other part is helping them understand what has already happened, because many of us make decisions every day, like going to a restaurant that we've never been to before by strangers that ranked it from a 5 or a 4, right? And it's sort of the same. We get sort of affirmation and making decision direction that makes us uncomfortable if we see other people have already done it and they've gotten positive results. So helping that. And then I think there's an element in there too about that storytelling. So it's how companies can develop and cater those stories to those stakeholders, whether they're the individual contributors, or they're at the management level, or they're even at the executive level, because you've sometimes got to sell up the investment in the education, for example, and where that value is going to be created and what that outcome is going to look like.
I would be, I feel it would not be good if I didn't mention, you talked about sort of getting out of your comfort zone, right? And not doing the same thing the same way. Well, in 2016, I seem to remember someone picking up and moving from where you were in Florida at the time, right?
Yes.
Out to Hanover, Germany.
Yes.
And not only did you thrive, you became the head of global business services out there, right?
Yeah.
And in a declining market, hit 11% profit increases and 5% revenue increases. That's amazing. But when you first went there, you had to feel terribly uncomfortable. I mean, especially, I know our European friends out there, they do things a certain way. And that's and you kind of know that when you're going into it. How much finessing of mindset did you have to do there, similar to the mindset shifts we're talking about here? Did you shift any mindsets, or were you able to just sort of plug into what they were doing? Because they've always been pretty advanced in their approach, and run with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, at first I had to earn their respect, so I did a lot of listening the first few months there. And I think that's also part of this whole learning, is that you've got to be open to that maybe you don't know it all, and maybe there's a better way. And then you might have the ideas that are actually better, but you have to present them in a way that makes sense to those people. And I was working across 29 different countries, the areas of Central Eastern Europe, European proper, UK, and Africa. And there's a lot of cultures and languages, and people think differently between Italy and France and Germany and Finland, right? So there's a lot to learn with those interfaces, but it's when it comes down to it, it's people, and people talking to people. At some point, there's connection points, and it's the same with customers, right? We got to find the connection points. You've got to build respect for the engagement, and when you introduce new ideas, you're changing their mindset. And I think I change my mindset probably every day and I still do, because I have this attitude that, there's always a better way. There's always something to learn. And I think that if we can challenge their sales organizations to think that way, they're going to adopt social and whatever the new, latest, greatest thing that comes along, because there will be something past social engagement soon. We just need to be ready and open for that mindset change.
Yeah, that's really good.
I think you bring that back into focus so well. That it's that how that mind shift is going to needs to happen. So I really appreciate you coming on today, just from a personal perspective as well, because of that incredible background that you've had, and I know that you're going to have great success with this new e-commerce venture for Konica Minolta. And can you let the cat out of the bag at all and tell us a little bit about what that group is going to be doing? Because I think when people think about Konica Minolta, they think copiers, and we know that that's not true.
I think that the main thing that's important is Konica Minolta is just trying to continue to evolve, right? To meet the demand of the market, to be there for our distribution channels, and to enable technology infrastructure that's going to be modern and innovative and creative and ever changing. And I think those are really my mandates, is to make sure that we're right there for the market, for our customers, and for our distribution channels and all of our partners. And to have that growth mindset that, what I think today is not going to be what's needed tomorrow, and to stay ahead of that.
I love it. Very consistent. That's awesome.
That's it.
Any last questions?
I've got a lot, but we're running out of time.
Yeah.
And, Velinda, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And I really appreciate how you shared for somebody at your level in business on how to engage with you on social. I think there's a lot of people that are scared to do that. They see somebody's title or their experience and they're writing something, and they don't think they can, jump into the conversation and comment and engage with them. And I think that was probably one of the biggest things I think our listeners should take away, that's actually what you would expect, and that's what you would want. You'd want them to be prepared. You want them to do their research, but you welcome that because, and you also have the mindset to learn. So I really appreciated that part of what you shared.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure. It was great to talk to both of you.
Nice talking to you again, and we'll hopefully talk soon. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for listening to the Social Your Sales podcast. If you enjoyed this show, please share it with your friends. Social is meant to be social, and sharing is a great way for us to meet you and get to know you. Click on share and tag us at FunnelAmplified, or just use #SocialYourSales.